Okay, welcome one and all to Starting Your Own Business. This workshop is made possible thanks to our friends at TD Charitable Foundation, as well as by the Small Business Administration, who is a sponsor of SCORE. My name is Whit Ford. I'm a mentor with SCORE in Southern Maine, and I'll be spending the next 90 minutes or so with you to go through many of the elements involved in starting most businesses. To give you a quick sense of what the major topics today are going to be, here are the conclusions we're going to reach by the end of our workshop. First of all, starting a business is a lot of work. Second, it may not be for everyone. You really need to know your customers as well as your competition. Don't shy away from any businesses from starting small, testing out ideas or approaches, learning from them, and then adapting. That is a secret to success for many, if not most, small businesses. And we, SCORE mentors, are here to help if we can. And we're happy to meet with you, discuss your plans, and help you land on your feet first try to the extent that that's possible. So our services are free, and we do it because it's fun and interesting. So if you'd like somebody to chat with and discuss your plans, don't be bashful about signing up with a SCORE mentor. I invite you all to use the chat window to tell me a little bit about who you are and the nature of business that you are either thinking of or may have already started. If you could, please indicate the stage you're in, whether it's an idea starting or already in business. And if there are any key questions that you're hoping that will get addressed today, please put those in the chat window as well, so that I have a better chance of addressing them at a point that is relevant in the slide deck here. So go ahead and pop that in the chat window, and we can get going on the workshop. So while you type, I will dive into material here. We have two slides in this slide deck. The first will have blue title bars, and that's content I intend to talk about. Many contain links to additional information, and I invite you to ask questions at any point, either by unmuting yourself and or turning on your video, because it's always nice to see faces that I'm talking to. But you can also ask questions in the chat window if you prefer to do that. We also have green title bar slides, and those to summarize points I've already made, and I would encourage you to think about your own business and write down some points from the previous slides that may apply particularly to where you are at the moment that you want to remember. So the green title slides are an opportunity for you to jot down a few notes on things that are relevant for your business about whatever might have just been discussed. Thank you. I'm seeing all the chat entries here. This is very helpful. Thank you very much. So as you start either thinking about a business or a business, it is really a good idea to think about what your goals are. And those goals typically fall into three zones, if you will. The what you intend to do, which a lot of people have thought out in a fair amount of detail. The how you intend to do it, which many people have thought out somewhat, but maybe not completely. There are often a few details flapping in the breezes. And the why. And you may have a very good sense of why you're doing this, but maybe that's not something you have focused on explicitly. And I would encourage you to focus on the why you intend to start this business just as much as the what and the how, because it's the why that really will get you out of bed in the morning and sustains you over the years for the long haul in your business. So I have found it very helpful to have my why of why I want to start the business, why I want to run this business, why am I doing this? Having that firmly in mind really helps me ensure that this business, as it grows, stays something that engages me and is fun for me, and scratches that itch that is the reason I started it to begin with. So do think about all three of these. All three are important, but don't neglect any one of them. So here's a green slide, your chance to jot down for yourself, ever so briefly, why do you think you wish to do this? What is the one main reason, or maybe two, that you want to start this business? Secondly, getting at the how and the what, how will you accomplish things? How is it you're going to offer your product or your service? And then lastly, what is your product or service? And we'll get into this in more detail as we go through things today. None of these questions are necessarily quite as simple to answer as it might appear on this screen. So we'll dive into this in more detail. First of all, what is a business in general? Many people conceive of a business that they intend to start in a more narrow way than is probably going to be the reality of the business that they start. Many, if not most, of the people I meet with are conceiving of a particular product or a particular service, and that's it. But a business also consists of the processes that you're going to use to deliver that product or service, that your staff or you will follow to ensure that you're doing so in a consistent way, that you're meeting legal obligations, that you're delivering the level of service that you wish, etc. You may also have some policies that you develop, both for you to handle your clients in a consistent manner, but also as a means of communicating your standards or your processes to all of your employees or subcontractors or whatever, to ensure, once again, that you are doing things in a consistent way across your client base. You may need certain equipment for your business to operate, and if you will, it's often helpful to have at least identified the equipment you're going to need, get specific about it, exactly what do you intend to lease or purchase, and when do you think you're going to need it. As you start your business, you'll have a lot less time to do research, and so the more research you can complete now at the beginning, the easier it will be later when you don't have a lot of time to say, okay, I'm now ready to buy or lease that equipment. Along the way, you need to ask how much capital are you going to need, how much money are you going to need in order to start your business. We'll come back to this a little bit later, but that capital is not only your startup costs, but also your business operating costs for the period of time from now until your business becomes profitable. In those initial operating weeks and months of losses, that is also money that you need to have in the bank before you start your business. You will probably need to think about software that your business uses. Are there particular websites or apps that your business will depend on? Is there software that you need for accounting or for time management or for time tracking so you can invoice your clients successfully? What software is most appealing to you, is most affordable to you, which ticks off all the boxes for the needs that you have for your business? You are probably going to rely on vendors. Have you identified all those vendors? Have you figured out what their pricing is going to be, what their terms are, how quickly they can deliver? Doesn't mean you have to identify all of your vendors, but certainly your key vendors should be identified. And you probably also want to identify backup vendors in case your key vendor cannot deliver in time or the right product or is out of stock. You probably want to have at least 2 vendors for everything that you intend to be purchasing on a regular basis? And last but not least, will you be having employees? Many people may start small, but at some point, if they wish to grow in order to improve their total profitability and improve the income that you as the owner can earn from the business, you may need to hire employees or subcontractors or whatever. Do you understand the difference between an employee and a subcontractor? That is something that is very important to understand because the IRS cares a lot about that. So these are all critical elements of any business, and some businesses will have many of these, but not all of these elements. That's okay. Do think about them in advance because, as I said a moment ago, you have more time to think about this now than you will once you start your business. Moving along, assuming I can hit the right button. There we go. The next thing to think about is what your role as the business owner is going to be. Many people don't realize that you are going to have multiple roles, whether you like it or not, because you are the owner of this business. One of the key roles as the owner is to raise the funds that you're going to need to get to break even. So to start out, that means you need to figure out what that total is going to be. We can help you with that, but a cash flow forecast will help a lot in that. You as the owner are also going to be the primary salesperson for your business, whether you like it or not. You may have a partner or somebody else who is doing a lot of the selling, but at some point, some key customer is going to come along and they are going to want to talk to all the owners of the business. They want to know who your business is, and many people are going to have more confidence in your business once they've met you. So as the owner of the business, you need to, from day one, think of yourself as being one of the primary salespeople for your business. As the owner, it's also on you to build your team. And we'll talk more about what I mean by a team. It's not necessarily employees in a minute. You will also need to develop your processes and your policies for your business. How are you going to do things? Think about that, document that. And as the owner, you're also going to need to monitor your financial statements. It doesn't mean you have to become an accountant, but it does mean that you need to become comfortable using your accounting statements to track your business's performance and help identify things that need your attention before they become a problem. So these are all things that you as the owner need to focus on for your business. So good things to jot down briefly. If you already have a sense of it, how much money do you think you're going to need to get to break even to the point where your business starts to generate cash? For some businesses, that can be a few weeks. For many businesses, it's many months. And in many cases, businesses take a year or two, or sometimes longer, to get to break even. Do you have the cash needed to get to there? What processes do you need to develop? What processes are central to your business and are worth documenting now so that when you have less time later, you already have it written down? And by the way, anything you document now will probably change. That's okay. But if you've got it written down somewhere, it's quicker to tweak it quickly than it is to try to document it from scratch. What equipment do you expect to need? Once again, doesn't have to be stuff you need on day one, but think out 6 months, a year. What kind of equipment do you think your business will need? Computers, printers, copiers, external microphones, ring lights for if you're doing stuff on the internet, cash registers, time tracking equipment, shelving for supplies. The list goes on and on and on. What vendors and software will you need? Have you identified them already, or is that research that you'd benefit from doing? And what policies are needed? What are you going to do when a customer asks for a refund? When will you give it and when will you not give it? Uh, if somebody asks for terms, can they pay later? Is that something you're going to allow them to do? And if so, when? So there are a number of policies like that that you may want to think about in advance so that you're ready and have an answer well thought through when a client does ask the question. So, turning to starting a business is not necessarily easy. There are a series of questions you may wish to ask yourself, namely, what personal experience do you have that is relevant to this business? Doesn't mean you have to have some, but it's a good idea to have in mind what of all the experiences you have had so far in your life are likely to be relevant for this business versus perhaps you don't think they're going to be relevant for this business. You don't need to start a business in an area you already know, but it can help. And certainly if you talk to a lot of score managers, you will find that many of them find that the experience they have in completely unrelated businesses is nevertheless relevant. So all of your personal experience with anything to do with business and interacting with other people is likely to be relevant in starting your business, but it can help to just note that down. An important thing to think about is what is your risk tolerance? Every business involves some degree of risk. So I encourage you to think about how much risk you're willing to take. And we can talk about dimensions of that, but it includes things like how much of your time you can devote to it. A new business will guarantee to take more of your time than you expect. How much money is needed? Is that going to be your money or other people's money? And how much of your money are you willing to put at risk? Do you have the talents that your business will require from you in order to succeed? Or are you going to be looking outside of just yourself to other people? And if so, are they going to be employees that bring those talents to you? Are they going to be subcontractors? Are they going to be partners? Are they going to be vendors? Where are you going to find the talent that your business needs if it's more than what you bring to the table already? Do you have the passion to stick with this business, even though it's taking a lot more time than you expected this week, or even though it's taking a lot more money than you first expected? Is this something that you are passionate about? The why you're doing it is important to you. And do you have the support from your family to spend the time and the money and the emotional passion on your business? All of those can be immensely helpful in starting your business. So while some of them may on the surface look less important, in the end, they are all important to your success as a business. Starting your business requires, as I've said, money, time, your energy. It requires your health. So if you may have some health issues, that can be something that's important to think about in advance. How are you going to keep the business ticking along if you are sidelined by a health issue for some period of time, if it tends to flare up occasionally? And starting a business also requires some skills from you and perhaps some skills from others, but which skills of yours do you see as being central to this business? It's worth making a note of them as well. So note, if you know it, roughly how much money you think you're going to need to start the business. And if you don't know it, make a note to yourself that this is something you're going to need to spend some time doing some research on and come up with a cash flow forecast for, to help you better estimate how much money is going to be needed, not just to start this business, but to continue operating it until it is generating cash on its own. Do you have the family support? From whom? Is it a spouse, a partner, children, parents, cousins, other relatives? The list could go on, but most people benefit from having their families understand that this business is going to take time and money and will generate some surprises over time. And when surprises happen, if they're willing to say, fine, go deal with it, that makes your life a lot easier than if they're not happy that another surprise came up from your business. Do you have the available time that your business will take? And do you have the skills that your business will need? If not, before you start the business, might be a good time to go develop some of those skills that you think will be really useful to you. So, as you turn to thinking about the details of the business itself, a key thing to focus on early is what will your customers want? The top reasons a startup fail are, first, they run out of cash, but second, you're not producing what the customers want. There's no market need. So if you haven't done a lot of research yet, if you have an idea that just your experience and your sixth sense says, yes, this is going to be a great idea for my customers, it's a really good idea to go test that. And I'm going to talk about that some more. My goal here today is to save you your time and your money by not having you waste either of them until you've done enough research to make sure that, yes, you have a reasonable prospect of succeeding with this business. So a good place to start is by defining what your customers need from their perspective. Many people can list a whole bunch of wonderful things about the business they're about to start. But when I ask them, but what are your customers telling you they need? There's a pause because they don't have any customers yet, or they haven't talked to very many likely customers yet. So even if you're coming from the industry you're going to be serving, and you have a really good handle on, from personal experience, what people in this industry need, it's still a good idea to go out and talk to 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 potential customers of yours going down the road to say, hey, if I were to offer this product or this service, would you buy it? And ask them, what are the top 2 or 3 reasons that you would buy it? What is it that you're looking for? What are the most important things you're looking for? Some of their answers may surprise you. So the questions you want to get at from your customer's perspective are, what is the they have that your product or service would solve? And the more you can understand about why they perceive that to be a problem, the better you're going to be at solving it or at our solution for it. Then think very carefully about why what you're offering will solve the problem they described and why it will address the reasons that they just told you that it is a problem for them. Some of the reasons are going to be things you may not have expected. They may be things like emotional problems, if you will, that they run into, which your product or service will resolve. And also think about why people might buy from you instead of from one of your competitors. This is very important, particularly in areas where you have a lot of competition. Everybody has competition, maybe not directly, but if nobody is meeting this need in the market in your area at the moment, well, clearly people are meeting it somehow, maybe by vendors from outside the area, maybe mail order, internet orders, whatever, but everybody has some form of competition already. And so think about how your customers meet their needs now, and then compare what you're proposing to offer and make sure that your offering is going to somehow be better for the customer. Is it something they can get faster? Is it going to be cheaper? Is it going to be more effective? Is it going to be more thorough? Is it going to have emotional benefits or other concrete benefits that the customer does not realize at the moment? All of those things are important factors to consider in how you describe what you're offering and how you market it to your prospective customers in the future. Then, having done all this research, circle back and think about that target I started with and double check that solving these problems for these customers is indeed something that still interests you. That as you now know more about the problem that customers want to have solved, is that something that you still wish to solve? So as you do this research, you should also be thinking about who are the people who will purchase from you. And when I say people, I include companies in that if you're conceiving of a business-to-business operation. What attributes will your likely customers have in common? Is it an age range, a gender, or perhaps a years in business, or business size, or industry the business is in if you're selling to businesses? Is it an income range or geographic area? Is it a life stage? Are they students? Are they parents? Is it an occupation that tends to purchase from you? Or a particular interest or hobby area for a person? Perhaps their political leaning or causes they support or their individual personal goals are important to making them be somebody that would be interested in what you're offering. Really, almost nothing is off the table. And this is considered to be developing a buyer persona. How would you define the types of buyers, and it can be plural, you can have more than one persona, who tend to buy from you the most frequently? So maybe it's one persona, maybe it's two or three. It's not going to be a ton. You're not trying to describe everybody who buys from you. You're just trying to describe the kind of people who buy from you most frequently. And if you don't know the answer to that question yet, then that's part of what you can research as you go out there and try talking to people to find out, hey, would you buy this from me? And if somebody gets really enthusiastic, you want to know more about the factors that describe who they are, such as what I list here on this slide, because that's going to be useful in your marketing to try to have them quickly identify you as a vendor that they might like to buy from. So here is a sheet that you might find useful when you receive a copy of the slide deck to print out and just fill in if you like. By the way, we will email everybody a recording of the presentation and a copy of the slide deck. So you don't have to do screen grabs now if you want to wait for that. It may take a day or two before you get it, but we'll get it to you. So on this sheet, you can start on the left side by describing what the customers perceive as the problem that they're facing. And then on the right side, you can describe who the customers are. What are their characteristics that tend to make them somebody that is more likely to be interested in what you're offering. And then in the middle, you can describe what your solution is that solves the problem on the left for the people in the market or markets on the right. Then, having thought all that through, you come down to the bottom and try to develop a value proposition statement. And I'll go on about this a bit more in the next couple of slides. But this is a one or maybe two sentence succinct statement that says, for this kind of customer, my product or service, a brief description of it, addresses this key pain point for these customers and perhaps better than the major competitor alternative and a reason why. This becomes something you can tell somebody as a quick response when they say, what do you do? And if it turns out there's somebody that is part of your target market, then you've just perhaps given them enough information about what you're offering to lead them to say, ooh, could I get your contact information? And you have the start of another potential sale. So your value proposition is a very important part of what might become your elevator speech, as is often called, or your pitch to new clients. Your value proposition may also include a number of adjectives, such as the ones on this page. And I do encourage you to think about what you can think of these as many emotional attributes your product or service will have. Is it friendly? Is it fun? Is it fast, inexpensive, Maine-made? Is it high quality? Whatever. There are many words that people use which you should be slightly careful about. In particular, if you're going to use the words only or first or best, you may want to make sure that you have data to back that up. But the words in color on this slide are pretty hard for somebody to argue with. I wouldn't use them unless you feel they're true, but don't neglect to describe the emotional benefit of what you're offering as well as the practical benefits. Which brings us back to your value proposition. From your customer's perspective, once again, try to take your customer's perspective. And this is where it becomes really important to talk to a bunch of your prospective customers. How would you describe your target market succinctly, briefly? So how would your customers describe themselves as opposed to how you might describe them? How would your customers describe the product or service you're offering them? You may have a description, and you will probably find, if you haven't talked to many prospective customers yet, that you spend 2 or 3 sentences describing what you're offering to them, and then they say, oh, and they use 1 or 2 words to simplify and summarize what you just said. Those descriptions that they come up with are marketing gold to you, providing that they describe what you're offering well enough. If they come back to you with a paraphrasing of what you just said, make note of that, because that might be a description that you wish to use in your marketing materials and in your value proposition. If you ask people, tell me something about the problem that this solves for you, hopefully you'll hear back what pain point this addresses for them, and make note of that too, because you want to know not just what it solves, but also the words that they use to describe why they find this appealing. You could ask people, well, what else could you use to solve this problem? And see what they say. And when they finish describing their other options, you could then circle back and say, so do you feel that what I propose here is better than what you just told me about? And see what they say. Once again, this is very useful to you in developing your value proposition and in developing your marketing talking points. And then lastly, once again, don't overlook the emotional benefits of the product or service you're selling. If I'm a bank selling loans, one of the things I could be selling is a thing called a line of credit, which is a loan that you have not actually drawn upon yet, but you can on very short notice because you've been pre-approved for it. And one of the big benefits that a line of credit can have for people that draw upon them is not necessarily a low interest rate or short turnaround time or a friendly banker. One of the benefits could be that it helps the owner of the business sleep better at night. And that has nothing to do with many of the features of most banking products, but it is an emotional benefit that the customer of the bank realizes from having had their application for a line of credit approved. Namely, if you know I can get $5, $10, $50, $100,000 on short notice because my loan has been pre-approved, if I need it. Hopefully I'll never need it, but just knowing it's there if I need it is an emotional benefit. So don't overlook the emotional benefits of your product or service to your customers. So here are a couple of value proposition examples. Some of these are okay, and others are not really very good as examples of value propositions. So I invite you to read through these and think about whether you think this is a good value proposition or not. So a coffee shop could state, we help our local customers feel good and do good by selling artisanal coffee in a community-focused space. Some of these words may not mean a lot to you, and some of them may. But there are elements in here that are very specific. We help our local customers. So they're serving a small geographic region, and they're focusing on a community-focused space. So they're trying to build community. They don't tell me how, but that would be something I'd be looking for when I walk in. What is it about this space and the way they operate it that makes it community? What do they mean by artisanal coffee? Is it hand ground, or is it hand mixed in some way, or is it local? What is it that makes this unique and hard to find elsewhere? And what is it they're doing that makes me feel good other than drinking their coffee, perhaps, and do good? Why is drinking coffee going to help me do good? Is it the caffeine that gives me energy to do good, or is there something else what they're doing? So to me, this raises more questions than it answers. Another example, Amazon strives to be Earth's most customer-centric company. Well, this doesn't tell me anything about who their customers are. It doesn't tell me anything about what they sell. It just tells me they're trying to do good customer service. So this doesn't do much for me as value proposition because I don't know what they mean by customer-centric. Walmart offers a wide selection of national brands at the lowest price anywhere. Oh, whether you shop there or not, you instantly know what they offer. National brands at the lowest price and a wide selection of them. So I instantly know whether I might want to check out Walmart if I've never been in one or not. So to me, this is a better value proposition statement than either of the two previous ones. Whole Foods provides healthy, ethically produced, exceptionally high quality food at a price premium. Well, they're probably not going to put that last part in any customer facing statement, but this also does a pretty good job of telling you exactly what they offer. If you're not willing to pay a premium price for a high quality food that's ethically produced, then this may not be the store for you. So a good value proposition can help your customer self-identify. It helps them figure out, ooh, is this a place I want to check out if I've never heard of it before? Or is this a place that I'm not going to be interested in? And if the reaction is, I'm not going to be interested, and they're right, then that's good for you because you don't want a ton of people walking through the door taking up your time if it's going to turn out that, no, they're not interested in what you have to offer. So a good value proposition statement will help people quickly self-select either in or out. And as long as those who self-select out are not making a mistake, then that's saving you time. So come back to this sheet and you might want to try to start fleshing out your value proposition a bit more because it's not an easy thing to do, certainly not first try. If it's worth anything, every time I have developed a value proposition statement, I am not happy with it. And so I edit it, and then I edit it again, and I tweak it again. And every time I look at it, I see something else I can tweak about it. At least it feels that way. And in the end, I'm never completely satisfied. So you're not looking for a perfect thing here. You just want something that's good enough. So enlist your friends, enlist your family, and then enlist a wider and wider circle of people to try out your value proposition draft statements on, and take their reactions to heart and use them to improve what you've put together. There's no substitute for feedback in developing a value proposition statement. And so don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough, but do expect to have to iterate through your value proposition statement a number of times before you end up with one that you think is going to work with your target market. So test it by asking customers open-ended questions. By open-ended questions, I mean ones that they cannot answer with just a yes or a no. Don't ask, do you like this? Ask, what is it that you like most about this? What is it that you like least about this? And that gets you really useful answers. As you start to sell your product or your service, you will learn a lot more about your target market customers and revisit and refine your value proposition as you learn more about the people who actually buy your product. Each of your market segments can have value proposition statements or value propositions that differ. Maybe not a lot, but there's no harm in having several value proposition statements, one that you use with this part of the market and one that you use with that part of the market. That's fine. And in fact, it's quite valuable to recognize that different segments of your market have slightly different value propositions. So always keep that going in the back of your head. And don't be shy about revisiting your value proposition and tweaking it to apply better to different segments of your target markets. Your markets may evolve over time, particularly if you're selling things that have a fashion element to them. You're likely to find that things change. So revisit your value proposition, I would say at least once a year, to make sure that it's still accurate, and tweak it if it needs change. So keep revisiting your value proposition periodically, because it will need to change as your markets evolve. Maybe not every year, but probably every 5 years for sure. And in some businesses, it may be several times per year. So write it down, use it when selling, use it when marketing, and revisit it periodically. If you want to learn more about value propositions, here are 3 links, which once again, you'll be able to follow live in the slide deck that you receive by email. I encourage you to visit these sites. None of these are score sites, but visit these sites. They can help you get a slightly different perspective on value propositions that I might have just described, and can help you through the process of developing your own. On to the next topic. I mentioned building your team earlier, and by a team of professionals, we're not talking about employees. Your employees may be part of it, yes, but somebody like me, a SCORE business mentor, can be part of your team. Your attorney, who you pay by the hour, is part of your team. Your banker, who you get a loan from or who helped you open a checking account, is part of your team. You can go to your bank and you can ask them for advice. You can ask them for loans. You can ask them questions that from their experience might be helpful. Who else among your clients should I talk to? For example, you can ask them to help build your network of people to talk to. Your insurance agent is part of your team. They're a vendor of yours. You buy insurance from them, but they can offer useful advice. Oh, don't forget to insure against this liability or that liability. Doesn't mean you have to buy that kind of insurance, but it's often useful information to know that that's a potential risk that they're aware of that might apply to your business. Your accountant is part of your team. Once again, somebody you pay by the hour, but who can give you incredibly valuable advice about your business. Your business peers, including your competitors, can be part of your team. So, for example, in Maine, we have many microbreweries, and you would think that all of the microbreweries in Maine would be fierce competitors, and they are. But amazingly enough, they also have been very willing to share some of their expertise with other breweries, their competitors who are opening up, because they see a benefit to enlarging the total market served of people who like drinking beer. So even if your local competitors may not be willing to give you the time of day, you may find that somebody else in your business who is not likely to be a competitor of yours because they're in another region or another country could be somebody who is happy to chat with you once a month, once a quarter, and could be an invaluable sounding board for you to exchange trends that are happening in your regions with, so that you can expand your thinking and stay ahead of what the market wants. And for many kinds of business, there are trade organizations, which if you join, can provide a lot of business peers, might provide access to insurance policies at a discounted rate through the organization, might lobby their state legislatures and all sorts of other benefits. So if there's a trade organization that applies to your business, great. Many businesses may not have one. That's fine too. You can also consider your local chamber of commerce, because that is a hyper-local trade organization of other businesses in your local area. And being part of that certainly will help with networking, but can also help with local political issues as they arise. So all of these are part of who you can consider your team. And if you establish that network of contacts with people in those businesses, many of whom are vendors to you, they are people you can list as members of your team when you apply for grants or loans or things like that, that you might need to start your business. Don't neglect to consider insurance needs for your business. If somebody were to make a claim against your business and you don't have the money for that, that could put you out of business. So even though the cost of insuring against that liability might be higher than you wish to pay, if it's going to put your business at risk, it may nevertheless be worth insuring against, even when your business is young. For other things, you may not need to insure against them until your business is older, is larger. For other things, though, you may find that as your business gets larger, you no longer need to purchase insurance against them, because that risk is not a large risk relative to the size of your business at the time. So do consider a variety of potential risks to insure against. And the best way to do that is to talk to your insurance broker, who can say, here are all the things I'd recommend you consider. And many brokers will offer policies from a variety of companies, so they have a broader perspective of the potential risks that your company might incur than you might initially. So do talk to an insurance broker. It doesn't cost you anything to talk to them. Next up, learn about potentially relevant regulations. Now, this is a long-looking list. For many businesses, relatively few regulations actually apply. Many people starting for business are pleasantly surprised to discover that their business is very lightly regulated. On the other hand, there are some businesses that are more heavily regulated. So potential regulations can come from the town or city that you're operating in, as well as from the state that you're operating in, or from the federal government. Typical town or city regulations are, do you need a business license? Many businesses do not require a license, but for example, in this town where I am in Portland, Maine, if you want to have a commercial kitchen, that has to be licensed by the town or city that you're in and has to be inspected. And that's a major hurdle for you to get through. When I was operating as a math tutor, I needed a home occupation license from the city I was operating in. You might need zoning permission if your location is not already zoned for the type of business you're operating. If you're in some sort of a historic district, you might need to make sure that the use conforms to allowed uses in that district. If you're leasing retail space or even commercial space of some sort, you may need the consent of your landlord in the lease that you sign to conduct that type of business at that location. You need to make sure that the type of business you're conducting complies with the building codes for your area and the building you're in. You might need the fire marshal to inspect your location to make sure that indeed it does conform with all the building codes. This is generally more true if you have customers present inside your location or employees present. If it's just you in an office, most of these aren't a concern. But the minute you might have more than a certain number of customers, you might need to have the fire marshal tell you what the maximum number of people allowed in that space is. You need to be aware of local taxes. In Maine, many business assets are taxed. So the assets you list in your balance sheet once a year would be the basis for paying a local tax to your town. Your income in Maine is not taxed by your town, but in some cities it could be. However, the state will tax your income. You might need a certificate of occupancy if one has not already been issued for that location, particularly if a major renovation has just been done for this space that you're leasing. You will not be able to do anything in that space until you get a certificate of occupancy from the town. Turning to state and federal regulations, some businesses require licenses, some do not. So if you're operating as, for example, an engineer or an architect or an attorney, you will need a license to operate in that kind of business. But many other businesses, such as a general contractor, do not yet require a license in the state of Maine. The state legislature, I think I read, was talking about maybe requiring general contractors to be licensed at some point in the future. But at the moment, they're not. If you will be having employees or customers enter your premises, you may need to comply with the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act. That has many requirements for access to your facility, and you would need to comply with those. If you are hiring employees, you will need to become familiar with labor laws, and they can be quite a long list. For example, you may need to have a bulletin board present where all employees can see it, listing key labor laws that you are required to comply with, and you are required to notify them about, so that they are aware that that is a law that you have to comply with. So that notice has to be on a bulletin board that all employees can see. So you might wish to hire a human relations consultant to quickly get you up to speed on the labor laws that you would need to comply with. Similarly, when you hire, there are immigration laws that you would need to comply with. So there's a form that you would need all applicants to fill out, certifying that they are legally working here. You would need to get the forms from every employee, providing their Social Security number, which allow you to file the Social Security and Medicare withholding taxes on their behalf for them. And then you will also have to pay your employer's share of those taxes as well. Then if you're selling a product or a service that is subject to sales tax in the states that you operate in, you will also need to register with the state and obtain a sales tax submission ID, under which you collect sales tax with every sale and then submit it to the state on behalf of the customers that you collected it from. Note that many states require every business that has a presence in that state to pay sales tax on sales to customers in that state. So the key thing is, what do they mean by a presence? That is evolving over time. And so, for example, now Amazon tends to collect sales tax for many, many states and submit it, even though they may not have a strict presence in that state. I believe their purchasing of Whole Foods is what really triggered that, because Whole Foods does have a presence in many states as a grocery store, and therefore now Amazon has to collect sales tax on all of their internet sales as well. So if you are selling something by mail to somebody who is in another state, for the most part, you are not required to collect sales tax on that sale. But if you do a lot of it, maybe that state has some laws that start to come into play. Or if you go to that state to make that sale, if you're there for a craft fair or something like that, you might have to collect sales tax in that state. So look up that state's sales tax regulations before you sign up for a craft fair in that state, so that you have time to apply for the appropriate sales tax number and to get familiar with the process of submitting sales tax collections to that state in a timely manner. So some things to note down. Who will you need to add to your team and when? Some roles you may not need immediately, but you want to make a note to self that I should think about this 2 or 3 months from now or 6 months from now. Other people, maybe you want to identify who they are now. What insurance is needed or desirable? Go talk to an insurance agent sooner rather than later, just to learn what the options are, figure out what you might want to buy when. What local regulations might apply to your business? If in doubt, go ask. Your local code enforcement officer at town hall is a very good place to start. They will be very much able to tell you what regulations apply to your kind of business and which ones do not. And then what state or federal regulations might apply. If you have an HR consultant, they can help with that. If you have an accountant or an attorney, they can help with that. A SCORE mentor can help with some of that, but insurance, accountants, and attorneys are all good resources to help you quickly figure out what state or federal regulations you should research now to learn more about them, to know whether they're going to apply to your business or not. So all of that brings us to the big question that many people have, which is, what type of business should I establish? If you start selling tomorrow, you are considered a sole proprietor. You're selling as yourself. You're doing business as yourself. You're going to report all of that income on Schedule C of your personal tax return. And that's cool. You can do that. Many, many people do operate this way. Many people do not. The reason not to is because if one of your customers comes back with a complaint and goes to court, all of your personal assets could be used to meet any judgment that's made against you. So that could put your house at risk, your retirement account at risk, etc. If you feel you're operating in a very low risk business, then there's no big deal here. But if you feel that you are not willing to put your personal assets at risk as a result of operating your business, then maybe you do not wish to operate as a sole proprietor. and you might wish to consider operating in a different form. The most common form that people elect is to become a single member LLC, a limited liability corporation or limited liability company. You apply to your local state to be certified as an LLC. And then as long as you operate as that LLC, which means clearly identifying yourself as an LLC on your company letterhead, on your invoices, on the name of the bank account you use, on the account that you deposit all of your customer received payments into, that's the account in the name of your LLC, then that should shield your personal assets from any company liabilities. You need to make sure you operate the business correctly as an LLC, and you do not mix your personal financial affairs with that of the LLC, but that offers you good protection for your personal assets from company liabilities. They're pretty quick and easy in Maine to set up. It costs $175 to send in your application. You wait 2 to 6 weeks for the state to finish processing it, and ta-da, you're an LLC. You'll have some other steps to take. I'll get to that in a minute. Another option could be you could operate as a partnership. That means that there's more than one person who owns the business. And in general, if you have a partnership, either as a general partnership or as a limited liability partnership, you want to make sure you have a partnership agreement. Once again, more on that in a minute. A partnership can be very flexible. Partners are not necessarily all equal in the business. Some can be more equal than others, so to speak. They can have different shares of the income. They can invest differing amounts. They can have different total votes as to what the partnership does or does not do. All that is very flexible. There are also many different forms of partnerships. You can have general partners and limited partners. So an attorney would be needed to help you sort out exactly what's most appropriate for your particular situation. But there is a partnership version of an LLC called a multi-member LLC, which offers that same protection of personal assets against company liabilities. Just like a partnership, you need to have a partnership agreement. It would be called the multi-member operating agreement. So that's another potential form of incorporation. Then you have C corporations. Every publicly held company in the US is probably a C corporation. They bring additional organizational challenges. You have to have a board. It has to meet at least annually. The board appoints your CEO, et cetera. And a C corporation is owned by shareholders. And a C corporation will be taxed at 2 levels. C corporations must pay taxes themselves, and then any dividends they pay to shareholders will be taxed again as income to the shareholders. So shareholders' income from corporations is taxed twice. So if you wish to establish a C corporation because you want to grow big, you probably are going to be paying yourself a salary, and you may also be a shareholder. So when you start to pay dividends, which may be a while before that happens, you would also perhaps receive dividends as a shareholder. So it's important to note that there's a tax advantage to being an LLC or a sole proprietor compared to being a C corporation in some situations. And then there are additional complications. You may have heard of S corporations. They are a form of a partnership, but it's actually a tax election. It's not something you incorporate as an S corporation. It's something you tell the IRS that you want to be taxed as an S corporation. And you can do that as an LLC. You can do that as a partnership. You can do that as a C corporation initially, maybe. Most S corporations, though, I believe, are LLCs or partnerships. I'm not so certain that you can be taxed as an S corp as a C corporation now that I think about it. Anyhow, These are all things that you should talk to your attorney and your tax accountant about, because I am neither. And they are people who should be involved in your decision to decide on what kind of, what form of incorporation you want to use, and whether you may wish to seek an S Corp election for tax reporting purposes. There's a link at the bottom of this page to the Maine Secretary of State website. If you're not in Maine, check out your state's Secretary of State website. Those websites contain a wealth of information that can be incredibly valuable to you in the process of incorporating, as you want to learn as much as you can about the process. Partnerships mean that you have shared ownership with somebody else of the business. You are sharing decision-making, you're sharing the work being done, you're sharing the profits generated by the business. If you have a partner, you need an operating agreement. It is a prenuptial agreement and a divorce agreement all wrapped into one. You need to think this through before you start operating as a partnership, because if you wait until after you have a business operating, there will be areas of disagreement and there will be differing assumptions between the partners, and that can turn into a very expensive legal problem to resolve later. As expensive as it can be to get help developing a good operating agreement or partnership agreement before you start your partnership, you should spend that money with an attorney now, because it is incredibly important to have all those details spelled out early and not later. It answers a lot of what-if questions. It avoids very costly legal disputes later. And most attorneys will recommend that every partner have their own attorney review the partnership agreement before you sign it. You don't have to do it that way, but that's what most attorneys I've heard talk about it have recommended. Other things you'll need to do in the process of setting up your company. First of all, you'll need to figure out a name for your company. Surprise. The links on this page will be useful. Check out the Maine registry of companies. You need to first make sure that your intended company name is not already in use in the state in which you wish to register the company. The second place to check to make sure your company name is not already in use is probably the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, to make sure that nobody has trademarked that name for your specific use nationally already. So if somebody says they're doing exactly the same thing you are for a kind of business and using your name, you can't use that name. But if they're doing a completely different kind of business using the same name you want to use, that might be okay. The third thing to check is see if a good domain name for your company name is already in use or not. If a domain is already in use with that name, or would cost you too much to purchase to use for your website, then maybe you want to find a different name sooner rather than later. Next up, establish your corporation by applying to the state for a certificate of formation. I already mentioned that. Third up, once you get your certificate of formation, you need to apply to the IRS website for an employer identification number, an EIN. It's your company's equivalent of a Social Security number. It's free. You can get it very quickly. As soon as you get the application on the IRS website done, you get a PDF back with your EIN number in it. It's almost instant. And so that won't slow you down. If you need to collect sales tax on what you're selling, some services are subject to sales tax, others are not. Most goods are subject to sales tax, but not all. Then you also want to apply to your state for your sales tax ID from the state. If you are establishing an LLC, you will need to register all beneficial owners of the LLC with FinCEN. This is a new requirement this year. You can follow this link. FinCEN is I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's the Financial Crimes Prevention Organization at the federal level, trying to make sure that all these shell companies that people create to make it really challenging to figure out where the money's going, they need more information to figure out where the money's going. So every beneficial owner of an LLC must register with FinCEN. The requirement is fairly lenient this year, the first year of this requirement. Next year, you have to register within 30 days of registering as an LLC or be subject to penalties. This feels like an onerous requirement because you may not get your certificate of formation back within 30 days of applying. But when you do get it, it will state that the date of formation was way back when you applied. So that 30 days may already have elapsed. So learn about FinCEN early, be prepared to register as soon as you get your certificate of formation, and be aware that something as simple as renewing your driver's license, meaning that you now have a new expiration date on your driver's license, even though the driver's license number is the same and your name is the same and your photo is the same, just the new expiration date is information that you have to update within 30 days with FinCEN. So if anything that identifies you is updated, you need to double check that you don't need to update your registration with FinCEN. If you're a C corporation, this doesn't apply to you. If you're a sole proprietor, this doesn't apply to you. It's mostly LLCs. But check out this link. This tells you who needs to register and who does not. Next up, you're probably going to want to open a business checking account in the name of your business using your certificate of formation you got from the state if you're an LLC, and using the EIN number you obtained from the IRS if you're an LLC. Many banks require an EIN number to open a business checking account for an LLC, but not all. If you are operating as a sole proprietor, your Social Security number will be the number you give the bank. And then lastly, don't forget any licenses you might need for your particular profession or type of business. So you might want to jot down any questions you have that you want to dig into further about the kind of business you intend to start, or what type seems most appropriate. Will you have partners? If so, learn about that sooner rather than later. Research your potential business name, check out potential domain names for your website. See if what you're selling is going to be subject to sales tax. Think about whether you'd rather have a local bank, a regional bank, or a national bank. If you're mostly operating locally, a local bank is probably going to be the friendliest for you and easiest for you to get loans from. But if you're operating internationally or nationally, you might prefer to have a national bank. It may be more of a pain for you to operate with initially, but they may be able to offer services that you need that a local or regional bank cannot. And then don't forget to double check whether you'll need any local, state, or federal licenses for your kind of business. Next up, funding. Everybody has questions about funding. And the most common question is, where can I go to get some? The first question you should ask for yourself before you ask anybody else for money is, how much money do I need? When you approach somebody else for money, you need to know how much you're going to need, not only for startup costs, but also to fund the initial deficits your business will have until you achieve break even. So don't even think about asking somebody for money until you've done the analysis of how much money you are going to need to get you to break even. It's probably going to be more money than you first thought. And for that reason, we generally recommend you develop a 2 to 3 year cash flow projection. Try to model your business month by month over the next 2 to 3 years. I know that seems like a lot and it can be a little daunting, but they're all assumptions. They're all guesses anyhow. Try to make them the best you can. I'll talk more about this in a minute, but that will give you a good sense of where you are likely to make money and where you're likely to still be consuming money. So where can you find funding? The most common sources of funding in order are your personal savings. That's the number one source of funds to start a business for most people. Your big question is, how much of your savings are you willing to risk in a business? Every business involves some degree of risk. So you are, by investing your money in your business, you are putting it at risk. You could lose it. So how much of your savings are you willing to lose? That is a really important question to ask yourself. And when you've finished answering that, remember that when you go to the next person to say, can I borrow some money from you? Or would you invest some of your money in my business? They will need to be asking the same question of themselves. Is this money I am willing to lose? If you're asking them for a loan, then you are committing to pay them back. If you're asking them for an investment, then they may not get paid back. So that's an important difference between loans and equity investments. Anyhow, back to my list here. The number one source is personal savings. The second source is bootstrapping, which I'll talk about more in a minute, which refers to starting your business on a really small scale and using the money that you earn to help you build the business. So in effect, you are generating your own financing to build your business. That's not possible for all businesses, but if you can do it, that's a great way to start. The third source of money is friends and family. It's sometimes a bad idea because if you can't pay them back, it can hurt relations that you don't want to hurt. So some people hesitate before asking friends and family for money. Other people don't. But if you do ask them for money, I recommend you be upfront with people about what they are risking. And if you do obtain money from them, treat it the same way you'd obtain money from anybody else. If they're lending you money, have a written loan agreement. If they're investing in your company, is it as a shareholder or as a partner? Treat it as that kind of agreement and have it written out. Next up, there are grants and competitions out there that you might get money from. And usually you don't have to pay it back, which is awesome sounding, but you have to win the grant or win the competition in order to get the money. And that can entail a lot of work for an uncertain return. Now, in some of the competitions, you will learn a lot. And so that work is well worth your time. But in others, you may not learn as much. And many grant applications can be very time consuming for, once again, an uncertain return. So think about the time and or money that you have to invest in participating in the grant or competition, and then how likely you are to win in deciding whether or not it's something you really wish to pursue. Fifth up is crowdfunding. GoFundMe is one example. There are many. In many cases, it's a prepaid sales platform. You know, buy your unit now and I'll ship it once I made it. And so by getting their money now, it helps you finance the initial manufacturing run. That can be interesting, but you need to develop the crowd yourself. Do you have a following in social media? If you don't, you may not have enough people following you to generate the funding you need for your business. Next up is loans. If you're getting a loan as a startup business from a bank, they're probably going to ask for a personal guarantee, meaning you're saying, I'm going to pledge the equity of my house or machinery that I have in the business to repay this loan. If you don't have assets you can pledge to repay the loan, you're probably not going to qualify for a bank loan as a startup business. That all changes once you have a couple of years of operating history. But as a startup, they want to see collateral for any loan they give you. And then least likely for a startup business is venture capital. They typically want to invest in business that has a proven market and is growing fast. And many venture capitalists want something that has a chance of becoming a $100 million business. If you don't see yourself becoming a $100 million business, then venture capital is probably not a route that is going to be terribly interested in you. If you could see yourself being there, maybe in 10 years, then maybe venture capital would be interested in you, but maybe not today. So that's why it's last on the list. Bootstrapping your business is a very attractive approach if it works for you, in that you start off small and you grow. And by starting small, you take small risks. Small financial risks, you make small batches of product. If you're selling a product, you're only selling to a couple of clients. If you're selling a service, that reduces your financial risk quite a bit. And it reduces your needs for cash quite a bit too, in many cases. It doesn't work for every business, but for many. Most importantly, though, by starting small, you're building your experience selling to your target market. And if it turns out your idea of what the market was is wrong, you can change that immediately, quickly, and easily. If you're succeeding in selling, it validates your concept. It shows you've got a market, and it starts the process of building a client base. You're building your list of emails of people who have bought from you. That's awesome. So the basic methodology is try something, get out and sell, listen to feedback, use the money you make from selling to improve your offering, and do it again. So if the first one doesn't sell, so what? You didn't lose much money. Come up with a better version and try again. That's the idea of bootstrapping, and it's a very circular process. Some additional ways to bootstrap your business. Keep your day job and use your free time to build a business on the side. That way, what you're earning from your day job is helping you fund your business. Perhaps you can subcontract things, such as skills you already have. And by working as a subcontractor to somebody else, you can learn about the market that they're serving, and then in time go out and compete with them. Or if you're making, say you're an artist, you can do product placement. You can sell your artwork in a cafe somewhere. You don't make nearly as much money, but you can see if it sells, and you can see what price point it sells at. And that's incredibly valuable information to get about your market before you start trying to say, have a show in a gallery, which is a more significant commitment. But even product placements can work well for other kinds of products. You can sell in a consignment shop, for example, things like that. You can also start with special events, church fairs, craft fairs, county fairs, school functions. You could perhaps rent a table at them. So that's a fairly low-cost way of getting in front of a bunch of potential customers. And all of these approaches let you keep your job, and therefore let your existing day job help fund the startup of your business. So I encourage you to note down which of these might be most appealing to you. What types of funding might be viable for your kind of business? Might a simpler offering than you're initially thinking of still offer value to customers and be something that's easier for you to bootstrap because you can produce some samples quickly and just start selling? You're looking for a low-cost, low-risk way to start testing your market. And then another question is, can your savings and bootstrapping get you to break even, or do you still need outside funding? And if you start with a smaller, more focused initial product, is it going to need additional features? And if so, can you develop them yourself using profits from bootstrapping? Or are those additional features going to be costly enough that you are going to need outside funding? It can go either way. It depends on the business. I mentioned earlier that you will need to understand your financial statements, and that's true, but you don't need to be an accountant. You need to know just enough to use your financials to manage your business. I think it's incredibly important that you reconcile your books monthly. And that means make sure that your financials are reporting the same balance in your bank account as you actually see in your bank statement. You don't have to be an accountant, but do become comfortable reading the key accounts on your balance sheet, on your income statement, and on your statement of cash flows. The accounts that will be important to your business vary a great deal from one kind of business to the next. So any class you take will inevitably talk about a whole mess of accounts that you might not feel are relevant to your business, but it will also talk about some that are. The links on this sheet will take you some more in detail explanations of what's a balance sheet, what's an income statement, what's a statement of cash flows. I encourage you to follow them. They'll hopefully help you become more informed if you don't already know the answers to those. And then lastly, a business plan. I encourage you to develop a plan for your business. It's a living document that documents your visions and goals. It can be short. For some businesses, it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. For other businesses, it'll be 30 or more pages long. It depends on the nature of your business. If you're a manufacturing business with a long supply chain and lots of potential issues to address, all of those should be addressed in your business plan, and that will make your plan longer. If you're a math tutor, it can be a very short business plan. It describes everything we talked about earlier under your value proposition, the problem you're solving, the solution you're offering, your market, how big it is, where it is, who your competition is. It has your financial forecast in it. It describes your team and the way you're going to operate your business. You can click on the examples link here for a whole bunch of sample business plans that are available from the Portland Public Library. It's really cool to read other people's sample business plans. These have all been anonymized, but it's a good exercise. When you develop your business plan, remember that it'll be read by knowledgeable but skeptical people like bank lending officers. They've read a lot of business plans. They know that your plan contains a lot of guesses. That's okay. If you can find objective data, then provide it when relevant, even if it doesn't describe exactly the market you're serving. If it describes a bigger market or a similar market in another city of the same size, that's probably fine. But do be clear about your assumptions in your forecast. Note them down on the right typically. Write them down somewhere, because when you present your business plan, you probably will be asked a bunch of questions about it. And if you could say, well, for that, flip, 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 I assumed this because I read this in this article and so on. The people will be willing to go with a lot of assumptions, and you will make a lot in forecasting, providing that they're reasonable, and even more so if you can show some supporting data to show that it's a reasonable assumption. You're writing it for your lenders, for your investors, for your partners, for your key employees, and perhaps even for some of your trade business partners. But most of all, you're writing your business plan for yourself, because it becomes the plan that you follow. It's the path that you're going to follow. It guides you for the months to come. And it gives you an opportunity to think through a lot of things that, in all fairness, you're not going to have time to think through once you start operating your business. So putting together everything I've talked about today, you start in the upper left with your problem, figure out who has this problem, describe what your solution is, and come up with your value proposition. You then go out and test it, tweak it. You measure whether it's working or not by whether you're selling, modify it if necessary, modify your product if necessary, and come back around the circle over and over and over again. Your business plan is describing all of this, including a whole bunch of the details I talked about in this presentation. And it's a quick summary of the path you intend to follow. So to end where I started, starting a business is a lot of work. It may not be for everyone. You really need to know your customers well and know your competition. You should probably plan on starting small, testing, learning, and adapting. And if you want, SCORE's here to help. We offer free mentoring services, and we're happy to help you. We're a nonprofit. We're a partner of the Small Business Administration. We have 300 and more offices throughout the United States, and we're the largest volunteer mentoring organization in the United States. If you'd like to sign up for a mentor, you can scan this QR code and sign up for a mentor today. We'll be happy to help you out. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer your questions now. I realize we've reached our advertised time, but I'm happy to address your questions now if you have them.
Hi, Whit. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you. I've got to hop off. I've got another meeting, but thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, have a great day.
Same to you.
Bye.
Bye.
Same here. I want to just say thank you. It was very helpful. I've got to hop as well, but appreciate your time, Whit. Thanks.
Any day. See you later.
Bye.
I see one question here from Charles. Does SCORE cost? No, all our services are free. In Maine, we've got about 120, 130 volunteers and 2 paid employees. All the folks you meet with are volunteers, and you meet at no charge. We happen to meet with you for the life of your business, so it's not a one and done meeting. We can meet with you repeatedly as you have questions or as you wish. So, Enrique, thanks for coming. Other questions?
Just here, Mustafa. I don't have a question. Just say thank you so much. I'm not a business man, but a student. I was able to understand really more than what we are taking as classes. Really, really helpful. Thank you so much for your presentation.
You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. Okay, well, that will wrap it up for today then, I guess. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you again in a future SCORE workshop.